Yo, we step up in the scene, check your engine is clean. DPF Guys got your ride smoking green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel out cold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold.
Okay, hey, it's Sunday. Hold on a second, get an echo. There. Where's that coming from? Oh, hold on. There we go. I had too many computers logged in. All right, so it is Sunday, November 10th, 2024, approximately 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Hello from Georgia, USA, anybody who happens to be watching out there. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the DPF Guys YouTube channel if you're not subscribed already. Don't want you to miss anything coming up in the future, anything cool that we might do. And if you're seeing this from anywhere else, like TikTok, hello TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, or anywhere else out there, you may see my handsome face. Make sure you go to youtube.com/DPF Guys and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we are DPF Guys, and I'm James, your DPF guy. And we focus 100% on diesel after treatment services for anything with a diesel engine and an emission system. Most of our customers are fleets, some are mechanics and shops, but many of them are owner operators. But we also service after treatment for diesel passenger vehicles and off-road equipment like tractors, excavators, earth movers, skid steers, and much, much more. We even handle stationary equipment, your pumps, your rock crushers, your generators, all that good stuff and beyond. If it has a DPF, we can clean it. So call or text us at 404-999-1361. That's 404-999-1361. Call or text if you have any issues you want us to help you with. And don't forget, I am answering live questions as well. So make sure you enter your questions or comments in the chat throughout the broadcast here. I'm going to check quick. Nothing out there quite yet. And I will answer your questions live. Of course, if you do have any questions for me that pop in your head while I'm no longer live, if you catch this later, 404-999-1361. What are a couple of disclaimers here? Real quick, always talk to your mechanic about any concerns you have with your engine or truck. Any pricing discussed here may or may not apply to you, and you should only be used as a guideline pricing. So we'll talk about something once in a while, and that number that we're talking about here might be too high or too low. Want to make sure we get you the right number for pricing. So nothing I talk about here is an official quote for any services by DPF Guys or anyone else. All right, let's get right down to business here. All right, question number one, coming from Bearded Bee Man from TikTok. What's the cause of this oil consumption? Now, what he's referring to is a video that I just did tonight, in fact, referring to a lot of soot with a Cummins with a truck with the Cummins 6.7 engine. And in fact, hang on a second. Let me see if I can pull that one up. I'm not going to try. I'll screw something up if I try that. But so a customer came in on Friday. He had a Freightliner M2 with a Cummins 6.7 engine. Freightliner M2 is a box truck, a good solid truck. Most of them have a Cummins 6.2 engine. There's a small amount of these Freightliner M2s out there with a Detroit DD5, which is a very unique engine. But it's probably 1% of the trucks on the road that are Freightliner M2s have the Freightliner DD5. So Cummins 6.7 engine. That engine is in a number of other trucks, specifically the Freightliner M2, which I'm talking about right now, also in the International 4300, and in, I believe, the Ford F750 has a Cummins 6.7 engine in it as well. And what happens with those trucks with a Cummins 6.7 engine is you can almost set your watch by it, but the injectors begin to fail at about 250,000 miles, 250,000 miles, 250,000 miles. And I would imagine that if you have something that has a 6.7 in it, like a bus, many buses have 6.7s in them, maybe you won't do it by miles, but the equivalent number of hours. So let's say 250,000 miles, just for sake of having a measuring stick. The injectors begin to fail. And what the people will do is they'll begin to get a DPF code, and they come in, and the first thing we check on these is see if there's any soot on the tailpipe. The customer that came in on Friday with the Freightliner M2, his M2 with the Cummins 6.7 had 350,000 miles on it, so it was well past that 250,000 mile mark, and his tailpipe was thick with soot, and that's always a bad sign. That means your DPF is cracked. And what cracks DPFs is thermal shock, too much heat for too long, and it will crack the DPF media, which lets the soot get through. The soot then gets into and fills up your SCR, your selective catalytic reducer, and which causes problems with the SCR, and you'll have a lot of soot in the tailpipe. This one had more soot in the tailpipe than I've ever seen in anything else. So the Cummins 6.7, regardless of what truck it is in, it's, Freightliner M2, International 4300, Ford F750. At 250,000 miles, the injectors begin to fail, and they dump more fuel into the engine than they should, which causes excessive soot. And I'll talk about overfueling in just a second. Question number 2. And what else? Overfueling produces soot because the diesel's burning inefficiently, also produces excess heat downstream, and will crack the DPF. And I always tell people that while I'm happy to clean their DPF, I really don't want to do it until they fix their injectors, because if you have a truck with an engine that's doing this to you, what will happen is no matter what we do with the DPF, whether we clean it, replace it, anything else like that, you're probably only be able to get 500 to 700 miles, maybe 1,000 miles before everything plugs up again. So it's definitely an injector replacement thing. If you want to know more about this whole 6.7 issue, if you've got a Freightliner M2 with a 6.7, or an International 4300 with a 6.7, a Ford F750 with a 6.7, or anything out there with a Cummins 6.7 engine that's doing weird things with your DPF, text or call 404-999-1361 and tell us all about it. Okay, number 2, also a TikTok question. What's number 3? Never mind. Hold on a second. Overfueling, please explain. Okay, this goes back to that Freightliner M2 question, saying that the injectors go bad and begin overfueling the engine, causing excessive soot and potential cracking of your DPF if you let that problem go on too long. So overfueling in a diesel engine refers to a condition where more fuel is injected in the combustion chamber than can be fully burned with available air. The result is incomplete combustion, often leading to excessive soot production, black smoke, or the soot that gets in the DPF, higher exhaust temperatures, and noticeably reduced fuel efficiency. Not always. And sometimes all of these things happen, sometimes only one of them happens, but it can be kind of a sneaky problem on you, especially because the failure of the injectors is something that does not show up directly on a diagnostics analysis. Overfueling can also cause long-term issues like carbon buildup in the engine and damage to components such as the DPF, which we talked about just a minute ago. So what causes overfueling in diesel engines? The number one cause, faulty fuel injectors. Leaking or malfunctioning the injectors can inject too much fuel or fail to atomize the fuel properly, causing poor combustion. Another thing is incorrect injector timing. If the injector timing of fuel injection is off, either too early or too late, the engine may not be able to burn the fuel efficiently, leading to overfueling. Potential turbocharger issues. A failing or inefficient turbocharger reduces the air supply, creating an air-fuel imbalance where there isn't enough air for the injected fuel to burn completely. In this case, it would actually be the injectors are fine, but instead of having too much fuel and too little air, you've got the right amount of fuel but too little air to combust it. Another thing that can happen, which is not very common, but a faulty or dirty MAF or mass airflow sensor. If the MAF sensor provides incorrect readings, the engine control module, or ECM, may compensate by injecting too much fuel because it's getting bad data from the mass airflow sensor. Clogged air filters. Now, basic maintenance, we always want to check that stuff. If a truck comes in with dirty DPFs, dirty DPF or DPFs, depending on what type of engine it has, a dirty air filter can cause a lot of issues. Restricted air intake due to clogged air filters limits the amount of air reaching the combustion chamber, disrupting the optimal air-fuel ratio. Potential ECM or engine control module malfunctions. If the ECM misinterprets engine load or air fuel requirements, it may inject more fuel than necessary, often due to faulty sensor readings. Some other real rare things: excessive engine load under high load conditions. The ECM may overcompensate by injecting additional fuel, especially if the turbocharger is not boosting what it should be doing. Potentially a malfunctioning EGR cooler or EGR system, and that is the exhaust gas recirculation system, or EGR. The system malfunctions, it can disrupt the combustion process and cause incomplete burning of fuel. Well, here's one: improper modifications or tuning. So if you start to diddle around with, boosting your power or something like that, it can cause issues with combustion. Aftermarket tuning chips or improper modifications that alter fuel injection parameters can lead to overfueling if not calibrated correctly. And last, but definitely not least, is low compression. Low engine compression due to worn out piston rings or valves can reduce combustion efficiency, causing unburned fuel to pass through the exhaust. Now, take a deep breath. The only thing that I've seen affect this Cummins 6.7 engine on a Freightliner M2, International 4300, or a Ford F750 has been the issue with failing fuel injectors. However, all the other stuff can apply as well. Now, if you've got a different truck without a 6.7 engine, you may want to pay less attention to the failure of the fuel injectors, but specifically like the Detroits on a Detroit engine on a Freightliner Cascadia, that one, I believe the interval to do an overhead or do a valve adjustment on a Detroit engine is 600,000 miles. Don't quote me on that, somewhere in that range. And they definitely need it at that range. So at 600,000 miles, get an overhead done if you've got a Detroit engine, because it will start to develop low compression, and a low compression in the engine in one or more cylinders can easily crack both DPFs down in the one box and potentially cause damage to the one box if the compression issue is really bad. But get an overhead done. If you've got cracked DPFs on a Freightliner Cascadia with a Detroit engine and your truck has 500,000 or 600,000 miles on it or more, and you have not had an overhead done before you replace those filters, get the overhead done, because it's a low compression issue. And again, if you have any questions, guess what? I'm going to say a number. It's a phone number, 404-999-1361. Text or call. We'd love to talk to you more about it. Okay, question number 3. These are great questions, by the way. And this is from Kale Antenna. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Deleting is the right answer. Why don't you say it? I'm not going to say it because it's not the right answer. And let me tell you why. Now, yes, it's bad for the environment. It's, you can get a big fine, but don't even think about those two things. Usually, the deletes are recommended for completely the wrong answer. So let me talk about some situations here. Just last week, we had a customer come in, and the mechanic, he just left, told him he needed to delete his complete after-treatment system, and it was going to cost about $4,000. But guess what the problem was? It wasn't the after-treatment. He had a dirty fuel filter. A dirty fuel filter. That's the only problem he had. Nothing else. Changed the fuel filter, solved the problem. He was on his way. Another customer came in a couple of weeks ago, less than a month ago, had a Mack, And his mechanic was really putting the pressure on him. You got to delete that thing, delete it, delete it, delete it. And guess what? Found out that the problem was that he simply had a crack in the downpipe bellows from the turbo, and a tiny crack. And he kept telling the mechanic, hey, there's a crack in this thing. I think that's the mechanic's like, no, you need to delete it. By the way, it's going to be $4,500 cash today, no warranty, but let me delete it. That'll fix your problem. Well, instead, this guy, the bellows wasn't necessarily cheap. It's about $200. But $200 later, he put a new bellows pipe on, one that wasn't cracked, solved the problem. But that mechanic was really pushing him hard to give him $4,000 in cash so he could delete his Mac. Another customer was being told by the mechanic to delete their truck. Guess what he had? A stuck fan clutch. So the engine wouldn't get hot enough to generate the temperatures necessary to regen. And that mechanic wanted almost $5,000 to delete that. It was another Mac. What else do we have here? Another customer, mechanic told him to delete because the truck wasn't converting NOx. Turned out that the filter for the DEF fluid had never been changed. It was plugged up. All of these customers are being pressured by their mechanics to do a delete. And there was not a single delete that was offered for less than $3,000. And I think the most expensive one was $5,000 or close to $5,000. Again, that would have been cash, no checks, no credit cards, no warranty. People often say to me, like, the reason you don't like deletes, dude, is because you like making so much money off of doing these cleanings. Well, a cleaning's $300-$400 plus parts, made ends up being $600-$700 when you're done. And you only need to get it done a few times in the life of the truck, maybe two times, maybe 3 times. So where it deletes $3,000, $5,000. So I don't know. I mean, is it possible? Is it possible that these mechanics might have been more interested in getting a wad of cash that they don't have to declare on their income taxes and don't have to pay child support on or anything like that than actually helping the drivers? Now, I'm not, maybe that's not the case, but I just, I can think of more of these situations where somebody had a very easily fixable problem on their truck, such as a fuel filter, such as a DEF filter. Now, go back to that guy with the fuel filter. The mechanic would have done a delete on that thing. He still would have had a dirty fuel filter. The truck would still not be running. Or maybe the mechanic would replace the fuel filter at the same time because he knew what the real problem was, but was trying to force a delete on this guy. Look, you do you. If you've got a truck and want to delete it, I'm not the police. I'm not Greta Thunberg. But just understand, do it for the right reasons. And there really aren't any right reasons when you think about it. Okay, question number 4. I have a Ford F-350. Where is my DPF located? Love your videos. I tell you what, I thank you very much. And again, this is barbecue man. Invite me over to your house for some barbecue from TikTok. The Fords, the F-350s, the 450s, etc., have the DPF is not a separate component. There's just an exhaust pipe, an exhaust DPF system that is about, yay big around, and it's about 8 feet long, and it contains all 3 components of your after treatment. So it has the DOC, the DPF, and the SCR all as one unit. And the dealership will tell you that you can't clean it. It needs to be replaced. And it's about a $6,000 part. And oftentimes you're waiting for weeks or months for that part to come in. It can be cleaned. It can be cleaned in 24 hours. On some of the trucks, so just so you know too, it might seem, well, basically just bring us the whole thing. And we cut it into pieces carefully, clean it, put it back together. It is like new. On some of here's a little bit of trivia on the 350s. Usually it's going to be the downpipe from the turbo is going to go into the DPF system. And the first thing it's going to hit is the DOC, the diesel oxidation catalyst, the catalyst, or the DOC, whatever you want to call it. And then normally after that, immediately following that is the DPF, the diesel particulate filter. And then you go a little further, you have the DEF doser, the DEF fluid injector, and after that you have the SCR, which is like the longest piece of this. On some of these Fords, on the 350s, they actually got really tricky and they stuck the DPF at the very end of it. So instead of being DOC, DPF, SCR, it goes DOC, SCR, DPF. And the only difference there is everything can still be cleaned, except if you do have one where it's DOC, SCR, DPF, you do need to get the SCR cleaned as well, which will increase the cost of your cleaning by about $225, just so you know. Okay, question number 5. How does fuel additive like Eloy's work in a DPF? Oh, it's actually Eloy's. How do you spell it? Eolus? Eolus? It's not Eloy's, it's Eolus. So it's EOLYS if you want to look it up. EOLYS, Eolus 176 is yet another fuel-borne catalyst, an FBC. And that's going to be very similar to Pittsburgh Power. It's going to be very similar to Hot Shots Secret. And any sort of fuel-borne catalyst, or FBC, when mixed with fuel, reduces the temperature required to burn particles trapped within the diesel particulate filter. This in turn increases filter efficiency, improves fuel economy, and reduces the risk of melting the filter during regeneration. I would have to disagree with almost everything that they said here. I think, I'm not sure what they're, because you can't reduce the temperature that the soot burns at. The soot burns at the temperature it burns at. Okay, so that's not true. Let's see here. Yeah, that's an incorrect statement, because the soot's going to burn at about 1,000 degrees no matter what you do with it. Now, what a fuel-borne catalyst does, again, this is going to be the same thing with Eolus 176, Hot Shot Secret, and Pittsburgh Power, Max Mileage by Pittsburgh Power. So they're an additive you put in the fuel, and it causes the fuel to burn more completely. It catalyzes the combustion, and when the fuel burns more completely, more efficiently, you produce less waste, because everything's burning. All the soot is basically smoke, just like when you have a campfire that's not burning real hot, like your woods, it's just started, your wood's a little wet, you'll notice it'll be really smoky because it's burning, it's not completely burning all of the wood. But when the campfire is really roaring, there'll be barely any smoke coming off, like I said, everything burns. The catalyst is what allows you to do that. It allows the fuel to burn more completely. So as long as Eolus 176 works the same way as Hot Shot Secret and Max Mileage, yes, this will cause your fuel to burn more completely and will produce less soot, which means there's less stuff in your DPF. But it's not going to reduce the temperature required to burn the soot. So I think somebody in their marketing team just must have not been paying attention at a meeting. So let me talk about additives for a second here, and I'm going to shamelessly plug Clean Air Fleet. In fact, while I talk about this, you can watch the very soothing crawl across the bottom. I reach around. Oh, excuse me, I'll give you a reach around. All right. So this is Clean Air Fleet, and we do sell Clean Air Fleet. You can also just look up Clean Air Fleet online, go to Google Clean Air Fleet. This is also a fuel additive. And what I like about Clean Air Fleet more than just the catalyst is, yes, a catalyst is really helpful. This will have catalyst effect, will have get your fuel to burn more completely. So you have all the benefits of fewer regens, less soot in your DPF, more miles between DPF cleanings. But where it's not just, because it's just not a catalyst, it also drops the water out of your fuel, which is really important, because if you have any water in your fuel, that's where you get the biofilm, where you get the algae and bacteria, or algae, I think bacteria as well can build up, certain types of bacteria that will build up in your fuel, causes goop in your fuel. And also you don't want any of that water getting to your injectors. Normally, your fuel water separator can take out a lot of it, your Davco or whatever that thing is called on other trucks where it's not that brand, the fuel water separator. But if you can drop all that water out of the fuel, then all that gets up to your injectors is fuel, and you don't have the water, which can really damage your injectors. And obviously, it's not, it will cause your engine to run less efficiently if it does actually make it through the injectors. It'll actually, water in the fuel can actually blow the tips off the injectors and ruin them. What else does Clean Air Fleet do? Over time, in the fuel system, you will get a buildup of kind of a carbon tar called asphaltene. Asphaltene is actually normally occurring in crude oil. And they take it out during the refining process when they make the various products from crude, such as diesel. However, asphaltene is formed in a hydrocarbon when it's under pressure and temperature. And guess what is happening in your engine? Pressure and temperature. So asphaltenes form. It'll break that up and allow them to be filtered out using your fuel filter. What else do we got here? I also added lubricity back in, it was like 07, 08 or so, when they had sulfur in the diesel fuel before they went to ultra low sulfur. That sulfur actually acted like little ball bearings in the fuel and lubricated all of your fuel system, your fuel pump and everything else, the moving parts of your fuel injectors. They took that out. And when you use an additive like Clean Air Fleet, it adds lubricity back in without having to worry about, there's no sulfur, but it adds lubricity back in with some of the components of the additive. So, yes, if you just want a catalyst, then Pittsburgh Power, max mileage, that's a catalyst. Hot Shot Secret, that's a catalyst. Apparently, Eolus 176 is another fuel-borne catalyst. And you'll definitely get the catalytic stuff. You'll get the fuel to burn more completely and burn hotter. We'll probably get you a little more fuel economy, but you'll still need to use additional additives to get the added lubricity to demulsify the water out of your fuel, to break down any of the carbon deposit buildups like the asphaltenes. And one thing I didn't mention is anti-gel. It also has anti-gel in it as well, which really only applies in the winter if you're going to be driving someplace where the fuel might gel. But if you want to do just one thing, then you have a choice of a few products to use. If you want to do all the stuff that your truck wants you to do, you either need to buy multiple bottles of additive or get one bottle of Clean Air Fleet, and we can definitely help you out with that. And you can order it from us from DPF Guys, or you can contact Clean Air Fleet directly and order it from them. Just let them know that DPF Guys sent you. All right, what else do we got here? What am I up to? Question number 5? What's number 6? Could coolant be coming from a failed EGR cooler? Now, this, I need to have some context for you here. First of all, Ken Wright, 3013 from TikTok, thank you for your question. Much appreciated. Okay, let me see if I can fire this baby up and show you what he's talking about. Bear with me for a minute. Okay, here we go. Camera 4. Oh, baby, look at this mess. Okay, what we're looking at here is a DPF from a truck with a Cummins 6.7. Looks like we had two things going on here. One is that let me show you that again. The depth doser was. I'm going to rewind a bit here. Is a oh baby, look at this. Okay, you see that? You see the tremendous buildup of DEF in here, and it's also kind of a salmon color, which would have come from coolant. So the question is, could that have come from a failed EGR cooler? And yes, coolant can make its way downstream into the after treatment from a failed EGR cooler. But in this case, we had a failed DEF doser, DEF injector. And what that was doing is it was just spraying so much DEF. I mean, it's gallons and gallons and gallons of DEF, dumping it in the system and building up like that pile of junk that you saw in that video. And there also was coolant. And what happens is DEF itself is mostly water, and it will freeze. Not a problem if it does freeze, but in order to keep it flowing, they need to heat the DEF lines and the DEF doser itself with by cycling hot, coolant through it, from the truck's cooling system. So there'll be coolant that kind of comes down through the DEF doser back up again, and that will thaw everything out or keep everything from freezing. And if the DEF doser gets cracked inside, that coolant can make its way right into the stream with the rest of the DEF and can cause a ruckus down in the DPF system. So, yes, the coolant could be coming from a cracked EGR cooler, but in this case, the DEF doser was so broken that it was going crazy with DEF, and it was also letting coolant into the DEF stream and dumping it into the DPF system. The amazing part is, if you watch this video, jump over to TikTok and check that one out. We actually got that all taken care of. We got it cleaned and got it back on the truck. Saved the driver. Man, oh man, I think we saved him about $8,000, $9,000, which is pretty cool. And if you have any issues with something goofy with your DPF system, call or text us 404-999-1361, 404-999-1361 to get a hold of us. All right, what's number 6? Oh, number 7. From William Horsley. Okay, so I had had a video talking about you should never see soot on your tailpipe, and William is saying I've got 3 579s, and all of them have black soot on the outside of the stacks, even my newest truck. We helped William out with one of his trucks recently, and it was a fairly new truck, fairly low miles. I mean, these things are constantly moving, so it probably had a few 100,000 miles on it, but the DPF was already thoroughly cracked. And so if he's got 3 579s and they're all pretty new and they all have black soot on there, I am thinking that he has got cracked DPFs. And we would like to figure out what's causing that. It could be a compression issue. It could be an ECM needing an update. But whatever it is, we want to make sure we got it taken care of, because the DPF is really a good, not to mix my metaphors here, but a canary in the coal mine. You ever go to the doctor and they look at your fingernails, and they can see based upon like discoloration of your nails or I don't know what they all look for, but your fingernails apparently are an indicator of other health issues. They can tell if you have some sort of kidney disease or something like that, or heart disease, whatever it is, number of things, by just looking at your nails. So when we look at a DPF, we can tell a lot about the truck, and we try to do the best we can to explain, hey, your DPF looks like this, and that could be being caused by something up in the engine. Check the engine. And I've lost count of how many times people said, man, thank God for telling me that. We were having some real issues, but we were able to kind of head them off at the pass and fix them before they became much bigger issues. So these 579s, there's 3 of them that have soot in the stack. I bet there's 3 of them that have something going on upstream, and let's see if we can fix that before the truck ends up getting stuck on the side of the road in the middle of the night waiting for a tow truck. All right. Number 8. Let's see here. What is causing the white-colored slobber coming out from the stacks? Dealer says no codes, no problem. This is from Rob Healy from TikTok. Yeah, and generally speaking, with very few exceptions, no codes, no problems is a good thing. Now, again, if you got to come in 6.7 and it's pooping out a bunch of soot, well, there aren't any codes for that. Sometimes, not having codes doesn't mean you don't have a problem. But in this case, what you're looking at is a healthy after treatment system. And the white colored slobber isn't really supposed to be slobber. It just basically is a little bit of DEF residue left over from the SCR, from the NOx reduction process. There is sometimes some of that DEF doesn't get completely catalyzed in the SCR and will simply pass up the stack and will dry into a powder. The reason that you're seeing the kind of slobber, almost looking like kind of wet chalk, coming out your stacks is it's a couple of things. One is all that's left once your exhaust passes through your after treatment is water and nitrogen. And I'm guessing that, and most of the water comes out as vapor and it doesn't build up. But I would suspect that based upon certain environmental conditions, higher humidity, cooler weather, the water coming out of that stack is condensing and running down the side of the stack, and you might not notice it in the summer and notice it more in the fall and winter, or vice versa. So no, there's nothing wrong other than it being, maybe a little unappealing. But if you look at your stacks and they just all they have in them is just a slight white dusting, or if it's humid out and that's kind of running down as a slobber, as this guy describes it, it means your system's running good. And if you do have some OCD, you might want to get up there and clean that off. But it's the truck is telling you that it's happy. It's like a purring kitten. Okay, number 9. Sir, are you talking about DEF filters or something else? I had the same problem with the Volvo 2019 D13. Please help me to understand. Okay, so I think I might have frightened somebody. I did a video about the problems with the 2015 vintage Freightliner Cascadia with a Detroit engine, DD15 or DD13. Now I say 2015 vintage because you might have a 2014, and if it was made kind of in the second half of the year where it really was a 15, you're going to have this problem. You might have a 2016, and but it was made in the first half of the year. It's essentially 2015. You're going to have this problem. The problem with that 2015 vintage, again, 14, 15, 16 Freightliner Cascadia with the DD15 or DD13 engine was that the fuel map in the ECM was incorrect. And if you've been with me from the beginning of the video, I was talking about overfueling. And what was happening with the fuel map is, again, it was overfueling. It wasn't burning the diesel fuel properly or completely. And what was happening is that unburned diesel fuel would go down into the one box. It would hit the DOCs, the diesel oxidation catalysts, and would bump that temperature up to 1,000 degrees or so. And that's fine during a regen when you're running a regen for 20, 30, 40 minutes. But if that one box is constantly being hit like a blowtorch because unburned fuel is making it hotter and hotter and hotter, it's going to burn all of the catalytic metals out of the SCR, the selective catalytic reducer, and it's going to destroy the SCR. And you're going to get codes about DEF quality, NOx efficiency, SCR conversion, SCR efficiency, NOx conversion. Usually will only happen when the truck is going up a hill and you've got a load in the back. Otherwise, if you're bobtail or empty or going downhill, it's perfectly fine. It's almost certain that if you get a 2015 Freightliner and it's got the original one box on it, you're going to have this symptom. Now, let's talk about this guy's issue because he's got a Volvo D13 2019. I have seen, first of all, the after treatment system on the Volvo and the Mac is probably one of the most reliable after treatment systems out there. And it's really bomb proof. I rarely see cracked DPFs. I rarely see failures in the SCR, but I do see that you'll get SCR codes, you'll get NOx conversion codes, you'll get SCR efficiency codes on the Volvos and the Macs, and they're the ones that have. If you got one of these trucks, the SCR is a cube hanging off the passenger side of the truck, and that's the SCR. Some people call it an oven, some will call it a hot box, but that's the SCR. And in the 5 years that we've been doing this in Atlanta, I have only seen one Volvo or Mac SCR fail. I have seen dozens of them give problems because what will happen is sometimes these trucks will the DEF will overspray and it will kind of coat the inside of that SCR, causing it to give these codes, but it can be cleaned. And so the first thing I would do is, in fact, I had to contact this guy, Mr. Call 83 USA, reach out to him and tell him to bring his truck in and let's clean that SCR. And I bet for a few $100 plus whatever the mechanic charges to pull that thing off, we're going to be just dandy. So if you've got a 2015 Freightliner, again, 14, 15, 16 Freightliner, and you have any issues with DEF quality, NOx conversion, SCR efficiency, or some combination of the above, and it seems to only happen when the truck is going uphill, you probably have a bad one box. If you have similar problems with a Volvo or Mack, you probably don't need to replace anything. You probably just need to get it cleaned. So let's help you out with that. All right. Last but not least, number 10. This is from Mark Giona 0516 from TikTok. And okay, so I was just talking about the Freightliner, and Mark says, "Oh no, I just bought a Cascadia with the manufacturing date of February of 16. So, yeah, beginning of 16. Had a bad head on it, fixed that, now working good with a solid engine light on, but running good. What should I do to fix it?" Well, the engine light can be a little annoying, but if it's not derating you, I would just keep on going. But I would really like you to get some diagnostics done on that thing and see what's causing that solid engine light to be on. And the one thing I would always recommend somebody to do, especially if you got something that's kind of a head scratcher, is make sure the mechanic does not delete the codes, does not reset the codes until he makes a copy of them. So hook up a computer, see what codes are there, active, inactive, pending, whatever they might be, and make sure you get a copy of them before you reset anything. But let's find out what that solid engine light's all about. And that's really it. So there you have it. Your questions, my answers. But let me quick check to see if we got anything that came in on chat. No, everybody's very quiet out there. So if you're not following me on TikTok, please do so. Look for DPF Guys on TikTok. If you are following me on TikTok, and many of you are, and I really appreciate each and every one of you for that. Let me get this off the screen here. Thank you for following me. Make sure you go to youtube.com/DPF Guys and follow us over there, because I want to make sure you don't miss anything cool. And so if you're watching this video, wherever it might be, if you have any questions for me, just leave them below as a comment or text your questions directly to us at 404-999-1361. And I will be back here next week. And remember to subscribe to our DPF Guys YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, and find us on TikTok. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Oh, hold on a second. I got to figure out it. It's been a long weekend. Anyway, catch you later.
The skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF Guys, we got the fifth so fine. Hit the road with confidence. Now the world.